Hi guys, my name is Sarvan Kumar, your economy faculty. Welcome to Economic Weekly series of Rathods IAS. Guys, in this class we are going to discuss about some of the important current affairs which appeared in different newspapers in this week. Okay, particularly as you know, as this is Economic Weekly, and particularly we are going to look at the current affairs from the economic perspective for your UPSC preparation. Right. Without wasting any time, let us see the first topic. Okay. First, we are going to discuss about the Sri Lankan economic crisis. See, the Sri Lankan economic crisis. But before we go into the details of all these, right, let me give what is this Sri Lankan economic crisis is all about in a brief. Okay, see. You might have already observed in your daily news channels that you have seen that the prices of different commodities which are consumed by the people in a regular basis in Sri Lanka have been increased to a higher level. In the economic perspective, as we are economy aspirants, we say that as an inflation in the Sri Lanka. See, when we look at the prices of the egg, it is 45 rupees. Right? And if we look at the prices of the chicken, it is about 1000 rupees. Right? And we also seen that the Sri Lankan government have deployed the unarmed armed forces. Like, what is the meaning of unarmed? They will deploy the armed forces, but they don't possess any kind of a weapon. These kind of armed forces are being deployed. To put it in a layman language, the Sri Lankan government have deployed the army, Sri Lankan army, in the petrol pumps to distribute the petrol and diesel. To such an extent, the economic crisis have been grown and developed and shot up in the Sri Lanka. Now, what is the main reason for this kind of economic crisis faced by the Sri Lanka? Right? Now, let us try to understand these things. What might be the reasons why economy of the Sri Lanka have reached a situation? There are some reasons. Now, let us discuss them one by one. Now, you have to understand one important thing here. First, the source of income. The source of income for Sri Lanka is mainly through three sources. What are they? They are primarily through tourism and export of the primary commodities. Even in 21st century, the Sri Lanka, the island nation of the Sri Lanka, is dependent on the export of the primary commodities, right? Where we export a lot of software exports, like, see, we do export IT products, we do export the marine products, but particularly this island nation Sri Lanka is exporting these primary commodities like tea, coffee, rubber, and it is the second important source of income for Sri Lanka. And the third one is remittances. You know the meaning of remittances? Remittances simply means, say for example, this is Sri Lankan nation, and any Sri Lankan moving out of the country, moving out of the country and living or working in some area. Say for example, he is working in Dubai, and if the person is working in Dubai, and from there, if the person sends money back to the home country, then that money is considered as remittances. Say for example, if I go to Dubai and I work there, and if I send money to the India back, we call it as remittances. Right? In the same way, many of the Sri Lankans are working all around the world. They are working in different countries all around the world, and they are sending money back to the Sri Lanka. We call that money as remittances. Now try to understand the tourism, the export of the primary commodities still in the 21st century, and the third one is remittances. These three are the main important source of income for the Sri Lankan government. Right. Now let us try to understand why these important sources of income of the Sri Lanka have been fallen. Now, as far as the tourism is concerned, try to understand guys, as far as the tourism is concerned, you might have already seen the April 2019's the Easter blast. The Easter blast happening in the Sri Lanka. Due to this Easter blast, on the eve of the Easter, there is a bomb blast happened in Sri Lanka. Now, due to this, the tourism have fallen drastically in the Sri Lanka. So more, you need to understand one more important point here, and it's an interesting fact. See, the most of the tourists who visit Sri Lanka are coming from the countries such as the Russia, they're coming from the Russia, the Ukraine, they're coming from the Belarus, and Poland. These are the 4 important countries from which the tourists visit the Sri Lanka. Now you all know that there is an ongoing conflict and war between Russia and Ukraine. When there is already an ongoing war between the Russia and Ukraine, how would the tourists from these countries will enter into the Sri Lanka? So due to the Easter blast and due to the ongoing conflict between the the Russia and Ukraine, the tourist visit to the Sri Lanka, the island nation, have fallen. Let me give a data, right? Before the COVID-19 pandemic and before these kind of issues, before the Easter blast and all these Russian-Ukrainian crisis, the tourism of the Sri Lankan government is about $360 crore, and it just fallen to $60 crore after this Easter blast and the Russian-Ukrainian crisis. Now try to understand. Due to these important reasons, the tourism income of the Sri Lankan government have completely fallen. The first important thing. And you need to understand what might be the reason for the second thing. See, during the COVID-19 pandemic, everybody have seen the inflation. What's the meaning of inflation? Inflation simply means rise in the prices of commodities is termed as inflation. Now during COVID-19 pandemic, in fact, we people in India also faced the inflation, where we have seen the prices of lot of commodities like the daily houseware items also is increasing. Now during this situation, same thing happened in Sri Lanka also. During COVID-19 pandemic, many of these commodities prices have increased. Now this is the first important thing, and the second important thing is the production of these commodities. What are these commodities? Tea, coffee, rubber in Sri Lanka have fallen. The production of these commodities have fallen before the pre-pandemic level to the pre-pandemic level. Now, when the production is falling and there is a COVID-19 pandemic, it both affected the exports of these primary commodities from Sri Lanka. This is second important thing you need to remember. And the third one, the remittances. Right? The third one is the remittances. Now you already know the meaning of remittances, and you also know that during COVID-19 pandemic, many of the countries have airlifted their own citizens from the rest of the countries in which they are living. Say for example, we have airlifted our Indians living in various countries with different programs. Similarly, Sri Lanka have also done that. And apart from that, during the COVID-19 pandemic, many of the people have lost their jobs, not only in the domestic market, but also in the foreign market. As a result of it, the remittances which is coming into the Sri Lankan economy is also reduced. Right? So, the 3 important sources of income, tourism, the export of the primary commodities, and remittances have fallen. Right? This is the perspective you need to develop with respect to the Sri Lankan economy first. Now, this is the first reason. This is the first important reason. And the second important reason what we can discuss for the Sri Lankan economic crisis is, see, now we know that the Rajapaksa is the prime minister. When you know that there are about 8 kind of Rajapakshi who is leading the government, the Sri Lankan government, right? This kind of a family affair these days, it became in such a way. Now try to understand, when this party wants to come into the power, when this party was rallying the election campaign in the Sri Lanka, they have promised that they are going to reduce the direct taxes as well as indirect taxes for the people, particularly for the farmers. Everybody knows, see guys, every country's constitution is going to give some responsibilities for that. Say for example, the Constitution of India given that responsibilities of maintaining the national security and order for the central government. For the law and order and the public order need to be maintained by the state governments. So the constitution has given a different responsibilities for the central government and state governments. To put it simply, in the Sri Lankan perspective, the Sri Lankan government also have some responsibilities. And in order to fulfill those responsibilities, any government needs money. The government gets the money through the taxes. Right? When we discussed about the budget, see, when we discussed about the budget, there is no word mentioned in the budget, right? There is no word called budget mentioned in the constitution. Now, in fact, we have the annual financial statement, and annual financial statement is all about the estimations of the revenue as well as expenditure. Now, when it comes to the revenue, we have the 2 important sources, like, right? The revenues mainly come from the direct taxes like income tax, corporate tax, wealth tax, all these comes under the category of direct taxes. These are the main source of income for the government. And we have the next important category, the GST, goods and services tax, which is a indirect tax, and it is also some other important source of income for the government. Now what the Sri Lankan government, in order to the current political party to come into the power, they have promised that they are going to reduce the income tax slabs of direct taxes for income tax, and as well as they are going to reduce the indirect tax GST. Say for example, they have reduced it from 15% to the 8%. And they have in fact increased the direct slab of 5 lakh to 30 lakh. What does it mean? Earlier, the GST on the commodities is 15% and now they are just charging 8%. Definitely, government's income is going to get reduced automatically. Previously, those persons who comes under the slab of 5 lakh, what does it mean? Those persons who earns an income of 5 lakh, they need to pay income tax in the Sri Lankan economy. Now, it is being increased to 30 lakh. Definitely, many people is going to get relaxed from paying the income tax. See, on the one hand, the main source of income for the foreign currencies like tourism, these port-led, the primary commodities, export-led economy, and also the remittances. All these three are reduced on the one hand. Now, when we look at the domestic economy of the Sri Lanka, the revenue sources like direct taxes and indirect taxes is also reduced by the Sri Lankan government to come into the power. Now, keep these things in mind. Now, after the post-war scenario in the Sri Lanka, they went for a lot of IMF loans. Remember, if somebody giving you the loans, it does not mean you have to take it. If you have the capability to repay the loan, then only you need to take the loan. But indiscriminately, the Sri Lankan government have taken a lot of loans for which they are now paying the interest rates. Now try to understand the situation, right? They have a foreign resource of about 1 billion now, and for the interest payments and the debt payments itself, they need $7 billion. Try to understand the situation of the Sri Lanka here. Now the third important thing is, recently the Sri Lankan government, they spent about 600 million rupees, right, on the fertilizer imports, which is approximately 0.3% of GDP of Sri Lanka. Now, you should not confuse the Sri Lankan rupee with the Indian rupee. The Indian rupee, 1 Indian rupee is about 2.5 rupee of Sri Lanka. So, you don't confuse the Indian rupee with the Sri Lankan rupee. It's a misconception. You don't need to compare it, right? Now, in order to reduce this import burden on fertilizers, try to understand. Now, the tourism which gives the foreign currency, it is being decreased. The export of the primary commodities, which also gives the foreign currencies, decreased. Remittances, which also gives the foreign currencies, decreased. The domestic money also decreased. Now, every country needs some basic foreign resource to get the essential imports. Say, for example, in case of India, we are dependent. 80% of the crude oil, 85% of the crude oil is being imported from the Gulf countries. Now, in order to purchase these crude oil, we need dollars, because you know that all over the world, dollar is considered as a hard currency for the trade, right? As a result of it, every country, not only India, even Sri Lanka needs some foreign currency. Now, do they have foreign currency? No, because the tourism have fallen, the exports have fallen, the remittances have fallen, even the domestic economy is falling down. Now, during these situations, the Sri Lankan government thought that overnight, they want to become an organic country. Try to understand the thing. Overnight, they want to become an organic state. Organic state means they don't use any kind of chemical fertilizers to produce any kind of agriculture commodities. Now, once they thought, this is their thought process, once they declare the Sri Lanka as a organic state, then these import burden would be reduced. Now, what happened after that? See guys, you all know we have already studied about the Green Revolution. When we studied about the Green Revolution, we have studied about the inputs of Green Revolution. What are they? Say, for example, they have high yielding variety seeds. We have the chemical pesticides. We have the chemical fertilizers. So all these are the important components of Green Revolution. Now try to understand, these high yielding variety seeds which we sow in the farmland is going to give the desired yield only when we apply the chemical fertilizers and chemical pesticides. Without applying the chemical fertilizers, we can't get the desired yield out of the high yielding variety seeds. Now, when the Sri Lankan government have banned all these fertilizers, 100% ban on the fertilizers import, then automatically when these fertilizers is not applied, they are not going to give the desired productions. Say for example, if a farmland is giving 100 kg of the food grains with the chemical fertilizers, when all of a sudden you apply organic for it, it is going to produce just 30 kg to 20 kg of the rice. Now try to understand the scenario. In this level, to this drastic level, the production of agricultural commodities have fallen. Now they have the reserves of 1 billion. Now the Sri Lankan government is facing whether to purchase the agricultural commodities from the other countries or to pay back the debt and interest payments. The burden, see, they want to reduce the fertilizer burden. They want to save the money by banning the fertilizers imports. But what's the repercussion? Now they are buying the food items. They are buying the food items. The inflation is raised to 15%. Now try to understand the scenario over here. Now see, during these situations, these are the main reasons why the economic crisis. See, to sum it up, so these fall in the tourism, export-led economy, and as well as the remittances, and decrease in the domestic exchange, decrease in the domestic income due to these kind of actions, and also the overnight decision of becoming a Sri Lanka as a organic state. All these reasons cumulatively led the Sri Lankan economic crisis, pushed the Sri Lankan economy into the crisis. All these decisions are taken, they're disillusionist and not an intelligent decisions taken by the political leadership of the Sri Lankan economy. Sri Lankan parties led to these kind of sources, led to this kind of situation in the Sri Lanka. So to put it simply, these are the main reasons why the Sri Lankan economy went into crisis. Right? I hope you understood. So their economy, the economic, tourism, exports and remittances have fallen. Domestically, they have reduced the taxes. Domestic economy is also fallen. And finally, the triggering point for the Sri Lankan economic crisis is declaring the state as an organic state. It is also fallen. It is also a failure step. So all these decisions cumulatively came together and created the Sri Lankan economic crisis. Right? I hope you understood. Now let us look into the details. See, you can go through this like tourism, export and remittances as we discussed, and the reasons for the economic crisis like indiscriminate loans which they had taken from the IMF post-war period, and fall in tourism due to the Easter blast and Russian-Ukrainian crisis. We have discussed about it. Indiscriminate reduction of the tax like from 15% to 8% and increasing the income tax lakhs from 5 lakhs to 30 lakhs. Right? Fall in the export of the primary commodities amid the COVID-19 pandemic is another important reason, and fertilizer ban and decision of becoming an organic state is the triggering point for the economic crisis. Right? Now this is all about what we have discussed. Just go through this. Right? You can pass it and you can go through it and see. These are the technical details, right, about the loans and each and everything. And we see the Sri Lankan fertilizer ban is the main triggering point, becoming 100% organic from overnight, which is not at all possible. Next, when we look at the India's assistance for the Sri Lankan crisis, see, beginning January 2002, India has been providing a crucial economic support for the island nations. The relief extended by India from the beginning of the 2002 totals over US dollars of about 1.4 billion. Right? And we have in US dollar currency swap agreements for about 400 US dollars, right? 400 billion. Now, we have given the credit, and more recently India extended US dollars 1 billion short-term concessional loans to the Sri Lanka to help country to face its unprecedented economic crisis. You know, you might, in the international relations, you might have understood that the Hambantota port, which is located in the Sri Lanka, is given leased for 99 years for the Chinese government. Right? The Sri Lankan government have given the Hambantota port for the Chinese government for a lease period of 99 years to get the foreign money because they are in crisis. So this is the situation. This is the level of the situation in which the Sri Lankan government is facing. Now try to understand. India should be very careful during this period. See, on one hand, on the Pakistan side, look at the neighborhood of the Indian. Now, on the one hand, in the Pakistan, we don't have a PM right now. Right? The PM, the economy, the political crisis is being seen in the Pakistan. On the other hand, in the Afghanistan, we have a Taliban-led economy. See, on the Myanmar, we have the junta. On the Sri Lanka, we have this kind of economic crisis. So, all those neighboring hood is facing a lot of problems, political problems, economic problems. So, India should be very careful enough during this period. Now, India should take this as an opportunity to strengthen the relations with its neighborhood. Now, there is a famous saying in the international relations that without a strong fence, you can't have a strong relationship with the neighborhood. You all know about the neighborhood first policy of India. When we have a neighborhood first policy of India, what does it mean? We should have an healthy relations, we should have an economic ties. Like recently we have seen the BIMSTEC right? Economic crisis. See, there are about 14 pillars in which the BIMSTEC countries and India need to cooperate among one another to further overall development of the Bay of Bengal region. See, in such a way, if we have a problems with the rest of the neighboring countries, then how can we have the cordial relations and how can we collaterally develop the economies? Say, for example, take the case of Sri Lanka. See, often the fishermen from the India will cross these rivers and enter into the Sri Lanka. Their law enforcement agencies is going to capture our Indian fishermen, and similar happens with the both sides. This is one important problem. Earlier, we used to have a problem with respect to the Kachitivi Islands. See, the fishermen from India and also the fishermen from the Sri Lanka, when they complete their fishing, they are going to have some rest in this Kachitivi island. For a long period of time, both the India and Sri Lanka have claimed this island ultimately with the negotiations we have given it for the Sri Lanka. So, in such a way, with the negotiations, with the soft power that India have, we should use this situation as an opportunity to have a cordial relations with the rest of the neighboring countries and reducing the presence of the China in the neighborhood region of the country. Right? I hope you understood it. Now, see, crucially, any disillusionment in Sri Lanka with China eases India's effort to keep Lankan archipelago out of the Chinese string of pearls game in the Indo-Pacific. We should not give that chance. We should take it as an opportunity. We have the neighborhood first policy. So, we should take it as an opportunity and to use this opportunity to maintain the cordial relations. See, remember this statement with, strong fence will lead to strong relationships, right? If we have a strong fence, we have a strong border with the rest of the countries, we can maintain it. So, in such a way, the Indian government should use this opportunity. Next. See, as far as the measures for the Sri Lanka is concerned, the government should take measures for the economic recovery of the country as soon as the shortage of certain essential commodities ends, which is expected before the start of the Sinhala Tamil New Year. Now, there is another suggestion given for the Sri Lankan government. The government should also join hands with the Tamil political leadership to create a roadmap for the economic development of war-affected northern and eastern provinces. It would also be the best to raise the domestic tax revenue and shrink the government expenditure, which we need to be reversing the mistake which is committed by the government to limit the borrowing, particularly the sovereign borrowing from the external sources. You know, the debt to GDP ratio of the Sri Lankan government have increased about 95%, right? So, all this is, as I said, this crisis should be used as an opportunity for the New Delhi, India and Colombo to trash out the solutions to the Park Bay fisheries dispute, a long-standing inherent, written in the bilateral ties between these countries. So, these kind of a situation should be used by both the countries to solve these kind of economic crisis, right? I hope you understood it. Next. This is about the Sri Lankan crisis, and next we will look at the next important topic. See, for the Amrit Kal, that is next for the next 25 years, that the government has announced we need to be self-reliant not just in the missiles, that is the defense equipment, but we should also be self-reliant in the food. Now, in this context, let me give the difference between what is the meaning of food security and what is the meaning of food self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency. Now, try to understand. Food security means affordability, availability and accessibility. 3 A's: affordability, availability and accessibility of the nutritious food grains for all people at all given point of time at affordable prices. The name itself, in the 3A itself, we have the affordability. So, affordability, availability and accessibility of nutritious food grains for all the people at all given points of time is called as food security. Now, on the other hand, what is the meaning of food self-sufficiency? Food sufficiency means if we produce the food grains within the country. Now, these food grains should be enough to feed the people of the country. We call it usually as food self-sufficiency. But in this case, it is right? Its true meaning lies in specializing in commodities in which we have a comparative advantage, export them, and import those in which we don't have a significant comparative advantage. Economy always going to provide you the solutions. Say for example, in India, if we produce more and more wheat, more and more rice, say for example, if we produce more rice, and the Bangladesh is producing more and more wheat, right? People in India also want wheat. Now what the economy says is, instead of dedicating some land exclusively for producing wheat within the India, why don't India export rice for the Bangladesh and import the wheat from the Bangladesh? Right? This is the solution economy will provide you. Now these kind of a situations, right? In such a situation also, in such a way also, we can become a self-reliant in the food. Self-reliance in food does not mean that we have to produce everything ourselves at the home irrespective of the cost, right? If some protection is needed for the new areas to develop, like infantry, it may be okay, right? It is not a hard and fast rule that all those food required for the people in the country is produced within the boundaries of the country, right? It is not hard and fast rule, right? As far as definition is concerned, we consider all, see, if the food grain produced within the country is sufficient enough to feed the people, we consider it as a food security, right? Food self-sufficiency. Now, in order to achieve this, we need a rapid agricultural development, research and development. You all know when we discussed about the WTO, when we also discussed about the three important boxes like green box, blue box, and amber box. Whatever the amount, whatever the support given by the government of India, not only any government of India, but also by any government, if at all the governments allocate some money for the research and development, it forms the green box of WTO's agreement on agriculture. When something is fallen in the green box of agreement on agriculture of WTO, this is not going to distort the free trade practices of the WTO. The government can spend whatever the amount, right, on the research and development as it falls under the green box, right? See, there is an ample literature that shows that agricultural research and development raises the total factor productivity and makes agriculture more competitive globally. Research and development can also make not only the production linked subsidies, not only the export linked subsidies, research and development, investment in the research and development will also make the product competitive in the world market, and this is what it says. See, if India wants to be fully self-reliant in food, it is generally agreed that it must invest at least 1% of its GDP, right, in agricultural research and development. The Economic Survey 2021 and 2022 explicitly highlighted this, the correlation between the spending on agricultural research and growth. The low expenditure on the agricultural research and development, but the budget of the both union government and the state government put together reveal that this expenditure on the agricultural research and development and education hover to around just 0.6% of the GDP, right? It need to be increased. Now, when we look at, there are some private institutions which is currently like Mahindra and Mahindra, which is mooting the research and development in the agriculture sector, right? Now, when we look at the way forward, we should increase the role of private sector in this research and development. The private sector need to come forward and help India attain supremacy in agricultural research and development and innovation systems. Right? Increase expenditure on agriculture research and development and education. The need of the hour is to focus on increasing the expenditure on ARE and other development projects. India's budget allocations in the agri-food space should thrive on creating more from less. We have these kind of policies altogether. So if India wants to be fully self-sufficient in food, it must focus on agriculture research and development and increase allocations in the budget, right? This is about the achievement of food self-sufficiency in Amrit Kal, which is just 25 years from now. Now let us see the other important topic, the inflation problem in India. See guys, in the previous classes itself, we have discussed about what is the meaning of inflation. Inflation means general rise in the price of goods and services is called inflation. And I also told you, if the price of the pen in the year 1991 is 10 rupees and if the price of the pen, the same pen in the year 2022 is 15 rupees, we don't express the inflation as a monetary value. We don't express the inflation as 5 rupees. But in fact, we will calculate the price index of these and we say the percentage, the average differences between the price index of a particular commodity in this year when compared to the previous year is called inflation, right? We have discussed about it. Despite being legally mandated to keep inflation in check, we also discussed that the onus and responsibility of checking the inflation and maintaining the inflation at an optimal level lies with RBI. right? See, inflation targeting is one of the important work of RBI currently in India. What's the meaning of inflation targeting? You know that both the government of India plus RBI both have come to a conclusion that the inflation rate need to be maintained between 2 to 6%. We call it as a flexible inflation target, say that is 4 plus or minus 2. You need to understand one more important thing here. See guys, see, you all know that the savings in an economy is considered as investment in the economy. Remember, savings in the economy is considered as investment. Let me give an example. See, say for example, imagine this is a bank. Now, if the bank have 100 rupees with it currently to give as a loan. Now, imagine this loan is taken up by the two entrepreneurs. This guy took 50 rupees and this guy also took 50 rupees. And with that money, they have established factories. They have established some important factories here. Now, try to understand, they have provided employment to 2 persons here and they have provided employment to 2 persons here. Imagine it's a pen manufacturing factory and it's a food manufacturing factory. These 2 people will work here and they will receive the salary. And these 2 people also work here and they will receive the salary. And with the salary received, they will demand the goods produced here. These people working in the food factory will demand the pens, and the people working in the pen manufacturing factory will demand the food items. Now you all know, imagine 2 pens are produced and plus 2 food items are produced. Each is priced at 10 rupees, right? Now totally the 4 items, 4 into 10, we have the 40 as GDP of the economy. Right? Now, imagine a situation, in spite of 100 rupees, what if the government gives 200 rupees? Here, you might expect the GDP of the country as 80 rupees. In such a way, savings in the economy is very much important to boost the growth. Right? Now, there might be a doubt for you. Now, sir, it's okay that we need to give more and more money in order to boost the economy. Is it okay? It's okay. It's accepted. Now, what if money supply is increased in the economy in such a way and it leads to inflation? Inflation is not good for the economy. Try to understand. If the RBI reduces the repo rate, you all know the repo rate is nothing but the rate at which the commercial banks is going to get the loan money from the RBI. Now, if the RBI reduces the repo rate, what is the situation? If RBI reduces the repo rate, automatically the interest which the banks is going to provide the loans is also going to get reduced. Imagine myself, if the RBI decreases the repo rates, automatically banks is also going to decrease the interest rates. When I find out that the interest rates in the banks is being reduced, definitely I'm going to take a loan. When I take a loan, I have a lot of money available with me, and with the money available with me, I am going to demand the goods. Right? And when I demand more and more goods, people like me, many of the people like me are demanding more and more goods. What happens? We have the demand pull inflation in the economy. Try to understand the paradox. On one hand, we need to maintain the money supply so that the GDP of a country will be continuing. On the other hand, we should not increase the money supply to a level that we have the demand pull inflation in the economy. Both need to be balanced. Now tell me, now here comes the question, what might be the optimal level of the money supply in the economy so that both the growth is achieved as well as the inflation is at control? We call it as achieving the economic growth and maintaining the stabilization of the prices of the goods and services. We need to achieve the growth on one hand, for which we need to enhance, for which we need a money supply in the economy. On the other hand, we should not increase the money supply to a level so that it lead to inflation. Then what is the optimal level? And what is the optimal level? That is nothing but 4 plus or minus 2. The RBI will allow to pump the money supply into the market, into the economy. Still it does not increase the inflation rate of 6%, right? If it increases the 6% threshold limit, then it is going to increase the interest rate. If the interest rate increased, automatically the money supply in the economy is reduced, and it will increase the interest rate to a certain extent where the inflation rate reduces to the 2%, and again it will increase the money supply, right, then it becomes 3% or 4%. In such a way, the optimal level to ensure both the growth as well as the price stabilization is between 2 to 6%. Right? Now, if RBI fails to make, this is called inflation targeting. RBI have a lot of tools available with it, like repo rate, reverse repo rate, CLRs, SLRs, right? CRRs, SLRs, capital adequacy ratio. In such a way, the RBI have a lot of tools through which the RBI maintains the money supply in the economy. Using all these tools and maintaining the inflation rate between the 2% to the 6%, so that both the growth is achieved as well as price stabilization is achieved, is the main purpose of inflation targeting and monetary policy of RBI. I hope you understood it. But unfortunately, amid the COVID-19 pandemic, inflation averaged 6.1% during the pandemic level. Right, 6.1% during the pandemic level. Still April 2020 to June 2021, it is about 6.1%. I told you the flexible inflation targeting is just 2% to 6%. So it in fact increased despite a massive collapse in the aggregate demand. Then in January 2022, as food prices recovered, headline inflation, the WPI inflation, once again crossed the upper threshold of the inflation target band. Right. See, the standard measures of the inflation in the pipeline is WPI. And since price increases at the wholesale level tend to translate into retail inflation in two courses, right? See, when RBI ignores these kind of inflation rates, see, mandate of controlling the inflation between 2% to 6% is the work of RBI. Now, what might be the implications if RBI continues it to grow to 6.1% and 6.2%? See, earlier we seen this kind of a situation. See, a decade ago, we were in a similar situation where RBI delayed its response because it was focusing on the growth. See, I told you the money supply, enhancement of the money supply in the economy is needed. If at all we don't ensure the money supply, look at this example. If we ensure 100 rupees, the GDP of the country is 40. If we ensure 200 rupees, the GDP of the country becoming 80 rupees. In such a way, ensuring the money supply in the economy is very much important for the growth. But it should not be such to an extent that the inflation is also getting increased. So that's the reason why we have the inflation targeting. But keeping in mind the growth, the RBI have allowed to continue this inflation rate at the initial phases. But later on, what the RBI have did, see, a decade ago, we were in a similar situation when RBI delayed its response because it's focusing on the growth. When the inflation subsequently took off, it reduced and reached the double digits, and the RBI had raised interest rates aggressively to bring down. As I said, if it will increase the money supply until it reaches the 6%. It will reduce the money supply by increasing the interest rates till it reaches to 2%. It will maintain it between 2 to 6%, which is a flexible inflation target. Impact on, see, it is also going to impact the credibility of RBI. See, in addition, if RBI does not allow the inflation to take off, there will be a long-lasting repercussions for its credibility. Right? If the public sees RBI consistently ignoring the inflation, then it is going to become a very costly thing or very costly affair in the future to bring down. See, ultimately maintaining, see, everybody knows these level of inflations is due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this is not because the inflation is led by these kind of conditions like COVID-19 conditions. It is not because that RBI have increased the money supply, so the inflation rate in the economy is increased. It is not that situation. Try to understand. It's because of the COVID-19 we have these inflation rates. Now, see, the inflation is increased due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but it is not because of more and more money supply. Now, in order to reduce the inflation rate, if RBI increases the interest rates, it definitely going to impact the growth. Right? We need to enhance the money supply. On the other hand, we also need to stabilize the prices. But this price increase is due to COVID-19 pandemic, but not due to the increase in the money supply. So it might, see, here comes the role of RBI. It should take care of the inflation. It should reduce the inflation, even though does not increases the money supply. It is because of the COVID-19. It should decrease the inflation rate. But on the other hand, it should also maintain the growth trajectory of the country. Everybody knows about the Keynesian approach. Once the COVID-19 pandemic is completed, when the banks don't have enough savings, when banks don't have enough investments, it is the Keynesian approach which is being suggested by many of the experts all around the country. What's the meaning of Keynesian approach? In the same perspective, in our example, say for example, if the banks don't have enough 100 rupees of the money, if the government, the rest of the 100 rupees might be making expenditure by the government, so that these GDP the same way will be increased. So, in such a way, the Keynesian approach is going to work. Increasing the more government expenditure to boost the economy is nothing but Keynesian approach. With the government expenditure, how the growth comes? See, in such a way, this is the example. So, I hope you understood this. So, this is about the Sri Lankan economic crisis and the food crisis, see, achieving the food self-sufficiency and also the RBI inflations. right? I hope you understood these classes, these concepts very clearly. And see, in the next class also we are going to see, let me tell you one important thing. See, reading the facts is altogether different. Understanding a concept is altogether different. Developing the perspective is the main important thing in the economy. Try to develop the perspectives. See, these kind of things cannot be studied in different kinds of books. We don't find the perspectives in the books, standard books. So whenever you listening the classes, just try to have a note of all these things in your books so that you can revise them after a period of time. So this is all about this week's economic current affairs. I hope you understood and enjoyed the class. So in the next week also, upcoming week also, we are going to look at all those economy related UPSC current affairs which appeared in different newspapers like Hindu, Indian Express, Live Mint, etc. Right? So I hope you enjoyed the class. Thank you and stay tuned to Rathods IAS.